Captain's Log, Episode 75. This week's episode of the Beer Vengers podcast is sponsored by the Beer and Cheese Collective, located at 35-11 Ditmars Boulevard in Astoria, Queens. Enjoy their eclectic array of craft beer, artisanal cheeses, and specialty grocery items at the Beer and Cheese Collective. We're co-sponsored on this episode by Single Cut Beer Smiths. Visit their original location at 1933 37th Street in Astoria, Single Cut North in Saratoga, and coming soon, Single Cut Barn in Manlius, New York, or just look for them wherever you get your craft beer. Single Cut, where mastery knows no shortcut. On this episode, Captain Huck and the Beer Wonders spring into April with special guest beer venger to be, General Manager of Single Cut Beer Smiths, Dan Bronson. We've got 5 amazing pours, a great origin story, and of course, the naming ceremony. This may be April, but we're not fooling around with this one. Okay, there may be a little foolishness, but it's all in good fun. Remember to like, star, and subscribe whenever that feels appropriate. And send us your emails at thebeervengers@gmail.com if you have any questions, suggestions, or if you just like hearing us talk about you on the show. And now, without further ado, please enjoy episode 75, Springtime for Kid Charlemagne.
With a beer vengers, beer vengers, beer vengers. With a beer vengers.
Welcome to the Beercast, everyone. Coming to you from an undisclosed location in Astoria, Queens, I am Captain Porter Brownstout.
Coming to you from an undisclosed location in the city of Fresno, California, this is I, the Pale Male Hophead Huck.
And coming to you from an undisclosed location in the County of Kings, it is I, the Beer Wonder.
And we are
the Beer
I had to get a breath in there.
Yeah, it's
I know,
tricky
that was
sometimes.
I forgot to
took a
hold
moment.
it. My diaphragm.
It's always an adventure. Welcome to the Beercast, everyone. This is very exciting to be here, not just because we're here. It's been a few weeks. We're looking forward to springing into spring. Did I actually just say that? I'm not. Anyway, it's spring. It's our first time in April, and we're not fooling about that. In fact, we're so not fooling. We've had people from bars before. We've had one or two people from breweries before, but this is the first time we've had someone from my home brewery, the one closest to my house. Please welcome General Manager of Single Cut Beer Smiths, Dan Bronson.
Woo!
Gentle folks, Beer Vengers, how are you today?
Welcome.
Pretty good, especially good having you here. As you heard in the in the opening bit, that the cold open is as they call it. This show is co-sponsored by Single Cut Beer Smiths, so you might be seeing some sponsored pours very soon.
That was at the absolute chillest. That was a lukewarm open. That was good. That was meaty. I'm pumped. I wasn't expecting it.
Thanks,
I didn't know I was going to get a show.
And we're a full production every time.
Quite honestly, the cold open has not been recorded yet. But when people hear this, they will have heard me introducing you as one of our co-sponsors. But that's a whole. We're getting a little too inside baseball here right now, showing people too much how the sausage is made.
So meta.
Wow, that's
and we're not
rigid
here.
Open. Then it doesn't even exist yet. It's absolute zero open. I love it.
Exactly.
Frozen in time. So I think that all this talk about the opening makes me think we should be opening some beers.
Yes, I think we absolutely should.
Yes.
Yes.
That was good work. And I am
now that
stumped,
spring
y'all.
has sprung.
It has indeed.
I am stumped.
You're
I don't know how to
stumped.
do this. I just don't know how we do this. How
What are you
we
talking
go
about?
Well, because it's time to open up some beers.
Yeah.
But with all this springiness in the air, I feel like my allergies have got me all confused, and I don't know how we divide this up, gentlemen.
I
need you to help me.
I think you're a little bit off because you haven't had a beer yet. So I'm just gonna I want to just look into your inner self, just engage that third eye, and what would be the most polite?
I mean, I guess we should have Dan go first.
Well, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
thought you weren't going
Good.
to ask. It was going to be so awkward. I mean,
You
I
haven't
know,
lost
I
it.
know.
Of course, our guest always goes first.
Please, Dan, what do you have for us today?
I knew you were refined, gents. I appreciate
Thank
that
you.
politeness. So kind of you. Well, I'm looking around here. This is a nice special occasion. Porter Brownstone's been around the block. I've seen that face and that cape waving in the Astoria air for many a year, so I got a little sentimental. I got reminiscent. This is year 10 for Single Cut for us. 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's just a whole thing, We've been doing this craft beer game for a while. We've made a lot of great beers. But I had something that was been lying around, quite literally, lying around for a long, long time. A beer that, like all great cellared beers, was not intentional. I forgot about it. And it happens to be the last bottle run that we ever did at Single Cut Beersmiths before we moved everything over to cans back in 2017. This is actually the very first beer brand that we ever brewed. This is Dean Pacific Northwest Mahogany Ale. This beer technically does not exist in this form any longer.
Dean in a bottle.
Dean in a bottle. Dean in a bottle.
So you're saying this Dean has been aged since?
Well, there's no room for guessing here. Halloween Day 2017.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Wow.
This was already a special occasion, but even more so now that we're
let's see this beauty.
See, the nice thing, is that this wasn't really a beer that was designed to be aged. So,
right.
The joke might be on me here, but
it's got a nice head.
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
Actually,
it really is pouring nicely.
The color looks perfect. It kept all of its carbonation. Nice job, retired bottling machine. Chin chin to you, bottling machine, and whatever mechanical hell you're in now.
Oh,
beautiful!
Heck.
And yeah, hold that bottle up next to it again.
Yeah, let's see the bottle next to that. Beautiful
what a great
beer.
choice!
Oh yeah, that is
a great choice.
Wow, that is epic.
Now, Dan, is it just the bottles that have been retired, or has that beer been retired altogether?
So Dean is still around, but Dean's morphed a little bit. Dean's more of like a hoppy red ale now. When we first started, Dean was our very first beer. And back then, it was basically we took our amber recipe, our brown recipe, and one of our IPAs. We just kind of mashed them all together. It was a super interesting beer. It was definitely like one of the most idiosyncratic things we've ever brewed, and it was a real winner, but a little difficult to explain to people. So over the years, it's gotten a little bit more focused and a little bit less experimental. And it's become one of my absolute favorite beers. You can find it in cans. We release it twice a year. You can find it on draft all year long throughout New York City and New York. But this OG, this is a little time capsule I just popped.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's not gonna get another one back. Gorgeous head, still sticking around. Wow, nice job.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's done a really good job. It's just a testament to the quality of your beers over all these years.
Excellent. Well, Beer Wonder, I think to sort of get your allergies and your spring head back into the game, I think you should go next.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to work on that.
Huck, you think that's a good idea?
I agree.
All right.
Dan has a question.
Yeah. I'm stocked on ammo here. Can you mind if I join you on the next beer? Can I open a couple?
Oh, sure.
I mean, honestly, if you're willing,
there's no limit. There's no limit.
No, I'm just gonna take off my shoes, put them up on the furniture. All right.
Perfect. Well, welcome to the family. Today, I'm pleased to say that I will be drinking a
sponsored pour.
That's right, a sponsored pour from our friends at Single Cut. Dan was gracious enough to supply me with this beer. And if I recall correctly, Dan, this is an award-winning beer. It is the Frequency Lager.
Mm-hmm. That's why I wanted to join you, because I'm selfish. I wanted one for myself.
I know.
Silver Medal Award-winning beer, Great American Beer Festival 2021.
Yeah. I have had the great joy of sampling this beer a few times in the past, and I love the kind of traditional European take that you've got, but it's got if my memory serves me correctly, it's got a nice kind of little bit of citrus floral, almost honey character to it, and just a little bit of bitterness on the back end, which is just how I like it. So very excited. I'm going to pour mine if you want to pour one too.
Oh, he's got the frequency. Yeah. Get him going.
Very good.
Oh,
no, I will say that that maybe a lot of people maybe don't know this because Single Cut's known for the IPAs, but Single Cut is an awesome lager house. Absolutely
incredible.
Awesome.
With gorgeous
I'm a
and
huge
also
fan.
gorgeous can art on this one. I love the multicolored frequency waves that you've got going on here.
And it's got the nice hoppy color there. Not just straw colored, almost a little haze to it, looks like.
Yep, and it just jumps right out at you, just right out of that you get a little bit of floralness, you get a little bit of resininess, a little bit of bitter. It's just all right there the minute you pour it. So it's one of those beers that it's hard to wait on once it's in the glass. So cheers. I will take my sips with everyone, but I feel like I need to share and Dan has done the inappropriate glassware, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Inappropriate. Oh, this is my favorite. A Turbinger. This is my ultimate lager glass.
Yeah, it's good lager glass.
If you've got a great high carbonation beer like Frequency, you go for a lower carbonation style, you're going to lose a lot of that carb in a glass like this. But guys, it's been a long day and it's been a long week, and I really don't plan on letting this be in the glass for too long today.
I think it's great. You don't usually see flights with that big pours, but I really admire your commitment there.
Captain.
All right. Yes. So this is one, to no surprise to anyone here. This is another
sponsored pour.
That's right. It is a sponsored pour from our co-sponsor, Single Cut Beersmiths. The hop there is sort of disappearing a little bit there. This is, of course, is the 18-watt IPA.
Such a good
sort of
beer.
there, with the lovely wings there. Yes. Thank you, Dan, for
looking forward to seeing this in the glass.
Oh yeah, this is one I have not had. Well, I had full disclosure. What's Orlando's job? What is
He's
his
our
title?
taproom manager for Queens.
The taproom manager gave me a very generous assortment of beer, so I was able to pre-sample this, and I realized I hadn't had it for a long time, and I had completely forgotten. Well, this is something we'll get into this when we get to the tasting notes, but it's a beautiful one. And here, let's just take a look at this.
I love this beer, and I love watching it pour. It just makes me want one.
Great.
Yep.
There we go.
Look at that. Good, good head build up there. Looking gorgeous.
Right. Let's hold up the can.
I can basically, I've had this one enough that I can taste this one already just from here on the other side of the screen.
All right. You've been very patient, Huck. Your turn.
Well, I've been, I've sampled a lot of Single Cut in my life in New York, so I feel that's okay. I don't quite have one today, but I'm gonna go with this baby here. This is the Jack Rabbit Brewing Company chocolate oatmeal stout, and you can see the seasonal chocolate bunnies on there. I'm not very religious, but I do worship chocolate bunnies. So let's open this baby
Spring has
up.
sprung.
I don't know. I just came up with that
your
line,
sins.
guys. Sorry,
that's good.
Yeah, I think I already know which song to overlay over these pour picks for you.
Let me go ahead and pour. This has got nice color to it. Let's see. Pour it right over my computer. I guess.
Don't do that. Not over the keyboard.
I have no choice. I got to get it on camera.
Yeah. Oh, that's looking good.
Jesus.
Thank you. Brownstone. I was hoping that was what you were going with.
That's exactly okay. So yeah, you know that. Well, Single Cut is known for their music.
Just
so
licking the can, I already taste the chocolate there.
All right.
Oh, let me get myself one of these.
That is just a gorgeous looking beer right there too.
Beauty.
I love it. Poured a lot thinner than I was anticipating for the way it was described. So I'll be excited to hear how it's tasted.
Well, with the light source behind it, I'm not seeing through it. So
okay.
It's definitely got a brown. Oh, okay. Let's drink. Yeah.
No, yes. Yeah. We've all got a full glass. I'm thirsty. Everyone, raise a glass. Cheers, Beer Avengers.
Cheers.
That's really good.
Oh wow! Oh my!
Oh,
that's like.
Yeah, Huck, you got the mystery here. You're leaving us in suspense.
I know.
It's got a real cacao flavor right up front, and then almost got a little bit of that, a little bit of like a little funk, like a little bit of like wet socks kind of vibe in a good way.
Wet socks in a good way.
In a good way. Okay, well.
Wow. I don't know. It's like so chocolatey that. It's really. I gotta check if there's chocolate in here, but it's good. Jack Rabbit.
Excellent.
I believe out of Sacramento. We talk more about that later.
Yeah, Yeah. Well, Dan, I gotta know, how has this beer held up over all of these many
I
years?
did notice that you weren't going right for the Dean there.
Yeah.
Well, I won't. It just wasn't the one in my hand,
Gotcha.
And if anybody
We
ever asks
gotta know.
you,
We gotta know.
what's your favorite beer? If their answer isn't the one in my hand,
That's
not a
true.
friend of mine. It actually held up beautifully well, and I will say I
Amazing.
cheated a little bit because I found another one of these bottles just buried in the back of a New Jersey liquor store a couple years ago, and we all tried it and thought, "Oh wow, this was this held up beautifully." So when I found this last one, I had a little inclination. I knew it was going to be a tasty treat, and it sure is. I mean, it has a big
All
hop
right.
profile in it normally. That dry
Mhm.
hop obviously has faded out years and years ago, but a nice
Of course.
diverse hop bill, which is how we brew
Mhm.
all of our beers. There's no featured hop beer. It's always big blends, trying to
Mhm.
bring out different characteristics of the beers, really trying to be complementary and respecting the fact that, hops are viticulture. There's terroir involved. Just because it says Citra on a box doesn't mean it's going to taste the same as last year in a different box. It's always going to be different. So we're always being very active in how we build our beers, blend our hops, and all that kind of cool stuff. But the reason why this beer holds up is because of the malt base. Same
Okay.
deal. We don't have a beer that's one malt. That's just not how we operate. There's some amazing single malt, single hop beers. It's just not how we like to brew. And this beer is such a beautiful and complex malt bill. We got a lot of really intense biscuity flavors, got some nice caramel malts, some good, really intense dark roasted malts, and then some really beautiful base malts. Especially in this era of single cut brewing, we're using most of our malts we're importing from Scotland. So having these really nice,
I did not know that.
great base layer for all of our beers. And it really shines. 5 years with low oxygen being held at a great temperature. It's really just giving them a chance to kind of widen out. And as those hop aromas abated and they oxidized very gently into these kind of dark fruit aromas, it just complements those malts even more. If you were blindfolded and asked me how old this beer was, I don't know if I would have said it was 6.5 years old, but it's really it's showing its love. I gotta give a chin to the brew crew when I see him tomorrow to let them know.
Indeed, that's fantastic.
Quality
Yeah, I think-
control,
news on the
quality
Dean
assurance, it's all that matters. Keep that oxygen out, and that beer's gonna be good a long time.
I do
love it.
recall.
We got.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say we're gonna need Dan to describe all our beers here.
I think so.
That was gorgeous.
Not
It was
tasting them all,
poetry.
but
Yeah,
Send you my
I remember
hourly rates,
I remember
they're
the first time I
astounding.
went to, like, back when Single Cut first opened, slightly before your tenure, Dan. I think the two first beers were Dean and the 1933.
You are 100% right. And though I wasn't there for the year after that, that was me, Mr. Brownstone, behind the taps that day, slinging that 1933 and that Dean OG. That was myself, and a big shout out for Tommy Ortega, who's over at Solid State in Woodside now.
very good.
We had been bar managers in the neighborhood
State,
for
yeah.
years, and so we came in to help the nascent and very, very small single cut crew right when they opened.
One of our other beer vengers, the Belgian Babe, is a frequenter of Solid State. She lives in that neighborhood. She
Love
talks about
that
it a lot.
Love
Yeah.
that bar.
Well, Beer Wonder, I think I don't know what order we want to go here. Let's hear a little more about the frequency.
Well, I mean, I just very much love this beer, and I completely understand why it would be award winning, because for me it is sort of oftentimes I think, lagers get a bad name. They're pretty simple. We've given them base, but this one is just it almost is almost a transitional beer for me. It always starts sweet and it always ends bitter, and I feel like it's a complex and interesting journey each time that does kind of have the ups and downs of the frequency on the can. And for me, there's like you talk about how you guys are mixing malt. I'm curious if the honey, if that's what I'm getting, or what is there anything you can tell me more about this malt blend? Because it is a lovely malt forward beer where I'm getting highs and lows from the hops, but the malt really does, for me, pull this whole thing together, which I just love about it.
Yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
The honey is coming, that aroma and that flavor,
Mhm.
100% from the malt, and
Yep.
no quote unquote honey malt, which is a
Yeah.
thing. We don't use that in here.
Right. Okay.
We do cherish our secrets in the single cut
Of
world,
course.
but I
Of
will
course.
give you a couple hints. A lot
Okay.
of the interesting nature of this beer, and I certainly think one of the reasons why it's won so many awards,
Yeah.
comes from a really diverse malt base. So your palate was dead on.
Okay.
You picked out exactly what's unique about this beer. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just barley malt. A lot of
Oh,
what
fun.
makes this beer really pop is some really interesting specialty malts.
Okay.
And I'll keep the brands and the farms to myself for the
Sure, of
moment,
course.
but they're spelt in there.
Oh, cool.
And that's a
Okay.
big one. That like awesome ancient grain. It's
Mm-hmm.
got a really intense kind of like dusty, nutty character to it, which we
Mm-hmm.
really, really like. And then we make this beer with a very specific yeast strain,
Okay.
which is German in origin.
Okay.
It has a really rigorous fermentation in the world of lagers, that is, which
Sure.
that's not usually how they work. They're usually a little slow. They take their
Yep.
time. This one likes to come out of the gate pretty fast, and it can get out of control if you let it.
Mm.
So how do we counterbalance that? Frequency has a financially irresponsible lagering time. So we let that fermentation.
That's the way to do it.
That's the magic right there.
Constantly be in the poorhouse. That's the way to have a great craft brewery. Let me tell you.
So the key to making a good lager is to lager.
The key, the key to making a good lager is to lager. And I just got back from we had our New York State Brewers Conference a couple weeks ago, and I was sitting at a panel, and some really great lager brewers from across New York State. Matt Levy from Threes was kind of the lead on the panel. Matt's one of the best brewers in the world, let alone in New York State, and that was kind of the takeaway from everybody: is how do we make great lager? It's like, well, you have to have a failing business model. That's how you make great lager.
Yeah.
Yeah, just make sure there's no chance of ever seeing black on that P&L, and that lager is going to be great. You know, put a lot of great malt, expensive hops, a lot of them. Put it in that tank
Mm-hmm.
in New York City, and come back in a couple months. And
Very good.
Well,
and same thing with frequency, labor of love.
yeah. Well, I mean, real success. It's a beer that I have enjoyed multiple times. So when I was handed one to be like, hey, why don't you talk about this on the show? I was like, oh, any day. So yeah, real winner on this one. But I will say the captain has the beer that initially turned me into an IPA drinker.
Interesting.
And so I am excited to hear a little bit more about this 18 watt.
Yeah, it's really interesting. A full disclosure, Dan, and this is in no way speaks ill of these beers specifically. Due to my general palate, neither one of these ones are ones I would ordinarily get. But I like most beers that I have. I like all good beers, and that's what this is. So it's been a while since I've had the 18 watt. As I recall, when it first came out, there was basically it was the 18 watt, the half stack, and the full stack. Or am I missing
No, you got
oh,
it. Yeah, they were
yeah,
all
in fact,
confusingly referred to as Billy, and then that second name.
Yes.
Yeah.
right. That's right. Well, I know all of these are like Easter egg, with Easter coming up right now. Easter eggs are ideal, but yeah, almost everything in Single Cut is some kind of Easter egg music reference, and I'm sure Billy was that. And so in the intervening years, that one's always been around. So I'm going for the ones that I haven't seen before, like your double dry hopped IPAs, like I'm an alligator and things like that. So it's kind of really exciting to get back to this one. And the first question I have about it is you're mentioning about how the formula for Dean has changed over the years. Has the formula for this one changed at all over the years?
Great question.
Never had a locked recipe. You know, the motto for our company is mastery knows no shortcut. We print it on everything. It's on the front of our building in Queens at least 3 times. It's on every label. It's on every piece of merchandise that we make. You know, that's our North Star. And, you know, in a lot of ways, it's a little bit of you could hear it as a pessimistic message. Mastery knows no shortcut. Because what we mean by it is we're always going to strive to take that next leap, to get to that next breakthrough moment. But we also have to accept, just like all great musicians in the world, not that I am or anyone involved is a great musician. We're all pretty bad musicians. We're never going to master the art form. There's always going to be things to learn. And even if we learned everything, then there's going to be the art element that will become dissatisfied. And that's okay. Like we like to take our inspiration to be a little punk rock. We should always be a little dissatisfied. And we're always we're always trying to improve. Sometimes we're also just fidgety, and we just want to see what's next on the horizon for flavors and experimentation. And 18 watt has been all over the map. When we first made that beer back in 2011 into 2012, we filtered it, because that's what we used to do with IPAs.
Right. It was much more of a West Coast IPA, right?
They all were, especially as a San
That's what I
Diego
thought.
kid.
Yeah.
That was my jam. I loved that. And then, as we got around and going, we started to have that moment of like, boy, I really love drinking that beer out of the tank before we filter it. I'll bet other people would too eventually. So that's what we started doing. We'd increase our cold crash a little bit to help get hop particulate out of it, which was great. That helped us develop a workflow, which we still employ to this day, which we use not just for our single cut beers, but up at Single Cut North, our much, much bigger production facility up in upstate New York. We make award-winning IPAs for a bunch of different breweries, and we use that same workflow to get that really great consistent haze and aroma, but without having to use filtration or having to use centrifugal filtration or anything like that. We're able to just use biology, gravity, and temperature to get that really consistent, hazy, aromatic beer. And 18 Watt's been along with us for the ride the whole time. We'll go for about a year of really getting it locked in, and then we'll get antsy and we'll start wanting to make little tweaks, or maybe we've got a batch of, hop X that didn't have a great crop year, and we say, okay, that's great. Not a problem. That's how hops work. That's how they're supposed to work. Let's go back to that blend, see what we can bring in to kind of compensate and bring out some of those flavors that we really love, since maybe, hop X is just not exhibiting those in this particular crop year. It's
I'd say
musical.
that 18 Watt is a beer that I consider to be, that I ever saw as a hazy IPA, is like the first that I ever noticed in a glass. I mean, it's certainly not considered, I guess, the first, but for me, one that looked like orange juice in a glass, I think it was and that was about probably 2013 or something like that.
Yeah, right about 14.
It's entirely possible that I have not had this one since it meant the shift to hazy. Because the funny thing is, there's a couple things have happened in the last 10 years. One, that hazy became a thing, because it really wasn't when you first started brewing these beers. At least wasn't a big thing in a huge way. Also, even though it was, I think at the time people weren't even talking about session IPAs. There were a couple beers like Founders All Day IPA that really started to push that. But this was a low ABV IPA early on. We shouldn't necessarily call it session IPAs. But it was definitely, I remember that West Coast thing. And for myself, the West Coast ones are probably the ones that I like least. I can enjoy a really well-made one, but that high hop content, that like punch you in the face bitterness, is something I've done my best, never really fully acquired a taste for. So I prefer this version of it. I noticed it was like, obviously this is fresh right out of the brewery, very crisp, very and that non-filter just makes it a little more easy drinking. And I think it's really remarkable. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We kind of took the phrase session IPA as a goal more than a descriptor. I mean, honestly, it's a style that does not have a good reputation, and it's a style that shouldn't have a good reputation, because honestly, it started with a lot of brewers, and I've seen it with my own eyes. Never single cut, but it's like, well, how do you make your session IPA? It's like, well, we over attenuate our standard IPA, and then we water it down. And I wouldn't say there's anything good about that, but there's a lot of beers that get made in that same way, in a really consistent way. But you lose a lot of soul when you do that, and so you ended up with these, if not watery, then these very light on the palate beers that had a really intense hop attack. I wouldn't even know if I'd call it a hop aroma, but yeah, I mean, Porter, you said it perfectly. Like, that's what it's all about. Like, it was just bitter. It was an assault. It was a punch in the face.
And no offense to those, because
punch in the face.
Okay, I think Huck feels differently. Yeah.
This is where the money gets made. I got to protect this thing.
That's right. No, you got to get punched if it's really that good hoppiness.
Yeah.
You want it to come right out and smack you.
But I remember back when we were first getting into all this, when the Beer Vengers were first forming, that Huck was always looking for those Stone and Joy By beers. And
Oh
for
my
me,
gosh,
they really were very much in that style. Again, back to San
Stone
Diego.
IPA, just OG IPA, my desert island beer. That's what
Yeah.
I'm taking to the island.
I used to
I
say
love it.
that all the time. It was like the best IPA that was made. That could be made. Yeah, the original Stone. Word about Jackrabbit. They're about 10 years as well. They're established. It says 2012, but then on their website it says 2013.
I think I might have visited them when I was in San Diego.
At Sacramento.
Oh, it's like okay,
not.
but they might have had. I feel like there was one. They had an outlet of it somewhere near the water. That's all I remember.
Now that funkiness I was talking about, it's actually I think it's the oatiness. I'm getting like an oaty, like a barnyard finish to it with the oats. And it's combined with the chocolate. It's a very interesting blend. I'm sure Dan will be able to describe it better than me. But
well, I think I know what you're talking about.
I'm a simple man, Dan.
I'm a big fan of Ripon High cacao level chocolates. I always got a little on my desk. My wife got me some 64%. That did not do the trick for me. Very good.
That's low. That's very low.
Not up there. But you get those
I'm
really
with
high
ya.
quality milk chocolates, especially, or even like a 64%. You know, you get that. I mean, it's kind of wild, right? We're alive in 2023, where you go to the coffee shop and there's 6 options of milk always now.
Yeah.
You know, which is great.
Yeah.
So if you don't drink a lot of milk anymore,
Some of them actually have dairy in them too.
when you get that like actual milk latte and you're like, oh, this tastes like an animal product. Like I can taste hay and grass. This is weird. Like we were just drinking this for hundreds of years without questioning it. Like you get that in chocolate sometimes. You get that barnyard. So maybe that's just it. They were so true to what they said they were going to do. There's going to be a chocolate stout with oatmeal.
Right.
Let's taste some hay in there.
Yep. They're not messing around.
Mm-mm.
I was thinking about single cuts I had over the pandemic because I went over there to the brewery a couple times. I was still in New York at the time, and I got some Jan. Is it Jan? We pronounce it.
You got it. You nailed it. First swing.
That's a
out
good
of the
one.
park.
Yeah.
And I also got this beer that it says it's not in production, but maybe you'll bring it back. All in all is all.
Oh, the Maibach. Yeah.
Remember this with elderberry?
That one was fun. Yeah.
It was great. I really enjoyed it. I'm a big Maibach guy, but yeah, it was really really fun. And you use your beautiful horizontal lagering tanks.
It's true. That's one of the fun things that we did when we opened. We imported some horizontal lagering tanks from the EU. And
you had those in Queens?
They're in Queens, yeah. And it's I have a little prop here. It's the easiest way to describe it. You know, I mean, I don't need to tell the Beer Vengers this. I know you know it, but for anybody listening, a normal tank is kind of shaped like this,
right?
You know? It's cylindrical and it's got a little cone at the bottom, right? And the cone is there because it collects the yeast as it slides down, because ales like to ferment warm and they're quote unquote top fermenting beers. Ale yeast likes to, it's not really the top, it's kind of just the upper quadrant of a tank. They kind of spin around in little circles through convection. There's a little bit of heat produced during fermentation, very small, but makes little convection circles inside the tank. And then when you crash the beer, so you get it really, really cold, it slows the fermentation process. It also makes them very sleepy. They fall asleep, they take a nap, they drop to the bottom of the tank, and then we're able to collect them from the cone and repitch into another beer. This is the kind of traditional way of doing manufacturing brewing. It doesn't always work that way now when so many beers are dry hopped, especially dry hopped early, but just for the sake of the argument. Lager yeast, though, is a bottom fermenting yeast. They like to ferment towards the bottom of the vessel, and they like to be kind of cold. So you can kind of see the problem here. If you have a conical vessel there, not always, but sometimes, and a lot of this is more theoretical than practical, the lager yeast would theoretically stack up in this cone. It would be all on top of each other. You want to give them some elbow room. Let them have access to all that delicious maltose that's floating around in there so they can chomp it up and make esters and phenols, alcohol, which I'm sure we can all agree is one of the better parts of the experience. And also make a ton of carbon dioxide, which is going to blow off. So we want them to be happy. We want them to be healthy. We want them to do their job, and we want them to do it at a reasonable time and effort. So those crafty Bavarians, they just looked on its side.
Oh, look at them.
So we've got horizontal tanks, and they're not quite cylindrical. They got a little bit more of an ovular shape. It's got a nice space down here on the bottom so that yeast can kind of spread out, get a little little elbow room, be happy and healthy, they get a little more access to the beer for primary fermentation. Again, I won't lie to you guys. I think that's a little bit more story than function. Brewer's yeast, especially properly industrially protected yeast, is hardy. They're good at doing their jobs under any circumstances. But I'll bet you in the 1850s, somewhere in a cave outside of Prague, that horizontal tank came in really clutch.
Probably so.
That's
probably so.
That's great. I wish we were taping this. This is good information.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. One of these days I'll figure out how to edit that into like a special little web series that we can put on. Since this is all audio tape, but yeah, all of you listening, we just got a wonderful visual demonstration from Dan, and
Well, we're not
maybe
recording the video.
we are recording it. So, but we don't usually release it.
I was joking.
I
I know
rented
we
this
were
tuxedo
recording.
for nothing, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, I know.
It looks great.
You
Thank
do
you.
look great.
It looks good for us. So yeah,
We'll definitely
I just
be
figured
using
it was
that
part
for.
of your disguise.
It's going to make those still shots pop when we show the poor pics.
Yeah.
So.
The tuxedo
still
is
see it. We'll
my
still see
Monday
it.
to Friday, but the feather boa I got just for you guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
it's a
for
nice
the video.
touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the goods.
It's going to be great for the photos. Yeah, no worries. Was not in
Speaking
vain.
of your epic fashion choices
Thank
here
you.
today, I do feel like it is time to get to know you a little bit better, which means
Well, this is
Captain.
true because I mean we know a little bit about you came from San Diego. I know part of your backstory because I used to see you at Crescent and Vine as well. But that really only
R.I.P.
scratches the surface. I think it's really time to learn a little bit more about Dan's origin story.
Origin story.
we triggered it again.
Yes. So yes, we want to know how when Dan first started, how early you want to go back, however comfortable you're going back, keeping in mind that if it goes too far back, the statute of limitations is probably fine. As to how how you found your path to the well, actually, since you're on the show, you're already a Beer Venger. Spoiler alert: everyone who comes on the show is a Beer Venger by the end. So how you set down your path towards that, where it began, what even if it's the most ignominious way, just how did you start your beer journey?
Well, I think the top line is that I grew up in a family where nobody drank, and not for any particularly religious or ethical or cultural reasons. Just wasn't a
It
taste.
happens.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a similar upbringing.
California people sometimes.
So that's kind of how it went. So I really found my way into craft beer through my lifelong, never-ending passion for food. That's my absolute favorite. I know there's no video, and so you guys are thinking like, Dan, you're 6'3", you're so svelte, you got that 8-pack. But believe it or not, food's really my go-to. So I just had a great appreciation for flavor. I grew up in San Diego, so that's a cheat sheet for New Yorkers because I came up in one of the biggest, most robust beer scenes really in the world. There's literally hundreds of breweries in the county of San Diego, which is, I think, 3.5 million people or something like that. A lovely place to be from, and an even lovelier place to have family who lives and will let you stay in their houses for free. So I just got this great exposure to this incredible array of beautiful beers. I studied sociology and film when I was in school. And so I had a little pre-career in the film industry, which wasn't quite for me. But when I was in school, I got totally spoiled, and I got to take this sociology of food cultures year, actually, a pretty intensive study, which was great. And my professor in that department was not just a huge appreciator of food, but a massive appreciator of fermentation in all of its forms, very specifically too with craft beer. So this is in the early 2000s, and he took me to the original location for AleSmith, and took us all in there. Statute of limitations being enacted now because definitely none of us were 21. But they didn't question the professor. So we really got our first tastes. Mine too, really informative. And the beer that I knew, in high school and college was something that was just so far away from this incredible experience of aroma and flavor, but also culture and narrative and this artistic expression. The idea that this beer wasn't utilitarian, it wasn't to be just to be drank at home after a long day. Not speaking ill of that. That's amazing. That's a wonderful thing that beer does. It gives us this great community.
Mm-hmm.
But craft beer like this really gave us this incredible community of flavor and artistic expression. And it really, really spoke to me. I loved film, I loved food, and I found a third passion. I really learned to love craft beer. So flash forward years and years and years, I moved to New York for a film shoot. I kind of quickly figure out when faced with New York housing costs that the film industry was never going to be for me. Um, so I really pivoted after a while, and I said, "Hey, I've always worked in hospitality. It was always my job. I worked at resorts when I was in college in San Diego, and I always got to do the beverage program. It was something I loved, something that gave me an opportunity to connect with my guests and really get them excited. They're all visiting San Diego. They're going to want some beer. It's one of the things that the city's really known for, so it's a great connection point." And so I started working at beer bars around New York, and like I said, it was a cheat code because they're like, "Oh, have you had a double IPA?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I had one in school, literally."
Yeah.
So I had all these these tastes, this palate for a beer style which was still kind of new in New York in the late 2000s, early 2010s, which was something I was really excited about. It's part of Single Cut's origin story, not so much mine, but when we opened in 2012 and early in 2011, there was only a handful, and I mean that like as in less than 5, of year-round IPAs made in the city, which was just really
Right.
incredible. So,
Well, there's so few breweries, right? I mean,
Right.
Single Cut. I mean, I know this is slightly disputed by Rockaway, but
and we can end that dispute. They're totally right.
Okay. So you're not for the long time. A lot of the Single Cut, where they were saying you're the first post-prohibition brewery in Queens.
I would always like to say first production brewery.
Okay, there you go.
I think to the defense of people in Single Cut making those claims, 9 or 10 years ago, and all of the journalists who wrote about it, the Rockaway people are incredible. What a great team! I just think it was a little bit different scale, and I think that Bridge and Tunnel and Rich and Castagna and all the incredible people there, and maybe even Big Alice, I think was right around the same time. We all had our origins at the same time. I just think maybe from a journalist's perspective, the scale was a little different. So we walked into Single Cut Queens, and it was a 30-barrel system with full tanks. It was a big swing for the fences. I think that's where that really kind of comes from. It's that production-sized brewery was the first. But as far as on paper, who made legal beer the first time, it wouldn't be Single Cut. And I'm not trying to be coy. I wouldn't want to get involved with the rest of the folks of the timelines. I just don't remember exactly. But
that's fair.
Definitively wasn't Single Cut for the first pint of beer made, but first production brewery was definitely Single Cut.
This is why we were drinking those California beers, why we love Stone so much and Sierra Nevada, because it wasn't here.
Right.
New York just wasn't making those beers. And like we were going to Pony Bar in 2010, and a lot of the beers weren't coming from the city yet.
I mean, and
explosion.
Well, to be fair, we were just getting used to having good American beers, let alone beers all over New York.
Lest we forget, yes.
Yeah, I look back on those times, and I'm a little sentimental. Also, granted, if you're going to pick between, hey, do you want to have a great beer scene, or do you want to live in a city that just gets all their beer brought in? Of course, I want to have a great beer scene. That's always better.
Yeah.
But it's been tough. There's all these like really great imports, where New York was the creme de la creme because it's New York City, right? Stuff from other places in the world, well, of course New York's going to have the best, and we did. Talk about importing beer scene, Philly maybe could give us a little bit of a run from our money with Tom Peters and all the great work that Monks did. They always had some incredible stuff, but hey, I want to try every beer from Europe. Oh, just go to New York. Like, just walk around. You'll go to that little Polish restaurant in your neighborhood, and they're going to have like 3 incredible beers that maybe you don't see anywhere else. Because there just isn't that regional demand. And with the beer scene being so big here, and I mean, just being so prolific, like having so much of it is such high quality. Between 2012 and 2015, you went from like, oh, it's local, I'll buy it because, yeah, okay, maybe it'll be good, to being like, oh, I can throw a rock and I'm going to hit a world-class brewer. It was really
Right.
wild, but we've kind of sucked all the oxygen out of that opportunity for tasting the world's beer like we used to have, and
No, it's
I
true.
miss that a little bit.
We've been doing this for almost, well, it'll be 3 years if we're still doing it in the fall, and we have had over 200 breweries on, as far as not brewers but beers that we've had. We've had over 200 different breweries represented, and I think over 90% of them have been American beers.
Yeah.
Probably 93.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest of the world makes good beer too. It's hard,
Mm-hmm.
but
When you go to those places, that's when you really enjoy it. In
Yeah.
my mind, when you go to Ireland, when you go to Germany, Belgium, which we just did last year, Belgium and
Mhm.
Germany, and it's just it. What do they say? What do the kids say? It just hits different.
those
Yeah,
kids,
that's true.
they
Those
know what's
kids.
up sometimes, And I guess to segue it into my very shortened backstory here too, that importing and exporting is what I did next in my career. I worked
Oh,
with
okay.
some larger brewers here in the East Coast and did exporting overseas, specifically to Asia.
Oh,
So that that boat journey is not the friend of beer, especially craft
right.
beer.
Right.
If you force
Mhm.
filter your products, which there's a lot of amazing beers, even amazing single cut beers, which do get force filtered, that's not a bad word in any way, shape, or form. It just needs to be used responsibly and for the right reasons.
Mhm.
You can get a lot more shelf life on the beer. And there's a reason why that high life that you forget in the back of your fridge and it's 10 months old doesn't taste that much different than the fresh one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because a
Yeah.
lot of science went into that, making that shelf stable craft beer. That's not what it's about. It's about the experience, it's about the story that the liquid tells. Um, that doesn't live on boats very well. And I think
Mm,
some of our best habits and our best traditions as American brewers we've adopted came from some of those very small regional European brewers who are much more about the story and the locale and the
right.
freshness, really doing the heavy lifting. Um, so yeah, that's the big plus, right? If I can get beer from Brooklyn, it's going to taste a lot better than beer that had to get shipped in from Belgium.
Hmm.
Right.
So was the importing exporting thing, was that with did that have anything to do with something called live bitter consultation?
Oh, that is a
Yes,
terrifying.
we've seen your LinkedIn profile, Dan.
Oh wow, okay, yeah. Thank
Do
you.
our
That
research.
does make me feel a lot better now. Okay, where did that come from? Yeah, that was an awesome little era. Beer was so new and so exciting, and you really had to curate because there was a lot more ill-conditioned beer out in the
Yeah.
market. So I had a few years before my single cut tenure, which is about a little over 8 years now, being general manager for
And
our
this was
company.
this just simultaneously while you were working at Crescent and Vine, because you didn't mention how, because
Yeah,
that's where I first met you, when you were bartending at Crescent and Vine,
I
or you were
didn't have a
bartending
great,
and you were their buyer, right?
yeah, not a great work-life balance of that era of my life for
Yeah.
sure.
Huh.
But yeah, pour one out for Crescent and Vine, the best,
Yeah.
Mm.
just
Yeah.
one of the best bars, period, in all 5 boroughs, and certainly one of the absolute best beer bars. That's all thanks to Fernando and Sue. That was their shop. They owned the restaurant next door, which is called Fatty's Cafe. You're an Astoria
Right.
OG if you know what that means.
Mhm.
Um,
Do they still exist over on 30th Avenue?
they do not. No.
No,
If
that
you
one
want to,
closed too. Okay.
yes, if you want to catch Fernando, he's actually one of the managers over at Pig Beach. So go down there and say what's up to
Oh,
him. Yeah,
Oh
a
wow.
lot of
All right.
Astoria's social scene and nightlife scene is thanks in no small part to the efforts of him and his wife Sue, who really built a community which I got to work in, build a life in, which was amazing. And those sweethearts, again in the early 2010s, late 2000s, whichever way it landed on that side of the coin. Um, yeah, just let me take over their spot, which they had no good reason to do, and let me build out a beautiful program and a great cheese program too, when that was still available but a little bit less common. And it was just great. We got to pour some incredible beers from all over the world. We got to debut a bunch of breweries. We got to work with people from their infancy. We had a launch for Single Cut there. We had a launch for Transmitter there. LIC Beer Project also started there. or not didn't start there. It just had their debut night. It was an incredible place.
Yeah, it was a
Tiny
nice bar,
too,
yeah.
450 square feet. If you didn't have a friend before you walked in there, you were going to get one because you were
Love it.
physically touching them.
Well, Dan, as a shout out to your curation skills, I will say 100% that the funny thing about Crescent and Vine was you can tell from the name of it that it sort of, I think, initially was conceived as a wine bar. And I know you had lots of wonderful wine there as well. It's a place you walk down into. It felt like you're in the middle of a wine cellar. You're drinking in a wine cellar. And I always kept intending to have wine, but your beer list was so great. I almost never had wine when I was there. There was always having like, oh, I've got to try that beer. Or they have that beer again, or yeah, it was.
I
Always.
have seen the captain drink wine.
Oh yeah, I like wine.
It does happen.
But Crescent and Vine, your beer list was so great. That's all I ever had there.
Oh,
I have that same issue a lot when I go to a place that has a good beer list. It's like, oh, I'd like to have some of this wine, but come on,
Yeah,
I got to try some of this great beer.
And I can't say it enough. That's all Fernando and Sue. They built a business. They saw it like changing a little bit. And, and most people, I've worked in hospitality my whole life. If you own a restaurant, you run it, like you're doing it because you love it and you have pride. Those are the only reasons why, because nobody makes money doing this unless you're Danny Meyer or, that's it. He's the only one. You do it so you can realize your dream. So, when you get this punk kid coming in, who's changing things up, and that's what people are excited about. I think a lot of people would have been like, hey, that's not our business and we don't want to do that. And these guys were just, it's like, oh, this is great. Like, this is fun. People are having a good time. That's all that matters. Because that's what wine too, but especially craft beer is all about. It's hack, but it's true. Like, it's about community. It's about people just having a good time and using this as like a little icebreaker to get them chatting. And that's what that bar was all about. A magical place. It'll live in my heart for forever. I dearly, dearly miss it.
And so what exactly? So how did you find yourself moving from there to Single Cut?
Single Cut, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I kept up with Rich Pacetta, who's the founder of Single Cut. He still serves as our CCO. So he's the guy who makes all these incredible labels. We'd worked together well for a while.
Does he design all of them?
All of them. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Very rare exception. Unless it's one of our
kidding.
cool, like, augmented reality labels. We have a company we work with for those. He does all of it. From obviously the iconic 18-watt. This frequency design is his. They're all his. Unless it's some kind of a video game label, he designs all those. I could have been at Crescent and Vine for the rest of my life, but the older you get, 6 a.m. is real late. And
well, especially since it turned out Crescent and Vine, you've already outlived Crescent and Vine, so that wasn't a possibility in retrospect anyway.
That's a fair point.
Sadly enough. And for those of you who've only heard of the Brooklyn Pig Beach, I'm assuming you're saying he's working at the Astoria one that took over the former Studio Squarespace. So
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
great
man,
food,
we used to
good
party
times.
over there.
But anyway, so yeah,
equally fun, a little bit less rowdy than Studio Square, which is nice.
Yes, I agree.
But yeah, I'll wrap this up because my short story is going on for so long.
Doing great.
The Single Cut, I came in as general manager of our company. Just a little bit of everything. I still, work with our front of houses to make sure that our amazing team is, equipped to keep entertaining people and having a great time. But we've grown a lot. We went from being a brewery which primarily distributed in Brooklyn, Queens, to at our apex of distribution in 2019. We were distributing all the way out to was as far west as we went, Illinois, as far south as the Carolinas, and then we've.
I do have a friend in Ohio who found a bottle of Eric there, or it might have been a can of Eric there.
Ohio, we're still in full state. We love Ohio. I get to visit all the time, which is great, though not for a little while here, and a lot of international. So we send a ton of beer to the UK, to Sweden. Through very specific distribution channels that really understand the product that they're working with. It's cold stored the whole time. It's on some expedited shipping routes. So it's landing about 2 weeks later than it would at a normal store. So really not that big of a deal, especially not with the quality control, which our crew has on our beers. They're really going to be tasting great for 4+ months. And then in 2018, the big move that we did was we really just couldn't produce as much. We love our Queens home. It's always been our home base, and Astoria will always be home for single cut. There's nothing in it that would ever change about that. But producing a full distribution network's worth of beer in a 5,000 square foot box on 37th Street was very quickly becoming dangerous, if not impossible, I think would probably be the best way to say it.
Now, Dan, when you first started working at Single Cut, they still hadn't even moved into cans or bottles at that point, right? It was all
we
draft.
were just on draft. In fact, one of my very first days was our first or second bottling run, and we had really just started that. Yeah, and that was something really new for small craft beer. Just not really been in package now. Of course, it's different now. You can go into major grocers all over the country, and there's whole aisles of local small batch craft beer. Maybe a little bit too much. I think we can all agree sometimes a little daunting, and no brewer completely happy with the speed in which all that sells. But it's great to have all those options and get to experience all those different flavors and brewers. But for us, we've always been a distributing brewery. That's how we make our money, is we sell to bars and stores. And we needed to make some big changes, and changes that probably weren't going to be possible in our beautiful little home on 37th Street. So we jumped into the deep end of the pool, and we bought a much, much larger brewer, the Schmaltz Brewing Company. Not the brand, but their physical space in Clifton Park, which is still our home up there. 5-year anniversary this week, actually.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's Single Cut North, our production facility, which I alluded to earlier.
Figure since it was Schmaltz, Mazel Tov was the
there you go.
Congratulations.
Well played.
Of course. Yeah, and we've been ready and rocking. We have more space than we would ever intend to use, which gave us a great opportunity to basically help out some friends who were in a similar situation to us, but maybe didn't have access to buying a giant 40,000 square foot brewery in a perfectly placed crossroads of the I-90 and the I-87. Which, not to talk logistics, but that's what I do in the company these days, is so nice. You can be anywhere on the Eastern Seaboard in less than a day's drive, which is great.
Yeah.
Really, really cool stuff. There's also a massive toll to come in and out of the New York with commercial. So it makes everything that comes out of New York City much more expensive.
Oh, there's a tap room upstate too, yeah?
There is, yeah. So we have a nice big tap room up there, and so we're a little bit in the country, still in an industrial park, but you guys know industrial parks.
Well, given what I've seen to my trip to San Diego, you must feel right at home there.
Right. It's the lifeblood of the brewing industry, being
that's
next to a random plumbing company. Yeah, that's
right.
That's how it works.
Yeah, that's what they're like here in Fresno, yeah.
Right. You find somewhere industrial, and then it becomes a destination. You don't go to an existing destination. You turn it into one.
And we've got a little of that going. So, Single Cut North, we have got an incredible small batch distiller who's across the street now. We do some huge events with them all the time. We're having a big 5th anniversary party at the end of this month, which we're really excited about.
Oh, very cool. I know I've got a couple of questions. I don't know if Huck and Beer Wonder have other questions, but before we get to that, I think Huck had something he wanted to. I think you wanted to do another.
I don't want to take too much time because we know we got to name our Beer Avenger here.
Yeah.
But I did. I could keep drinking it after the show's over. But in honor of our Beer Avenger here, we're going to go down south. Go down to
the
Carlsbad
there.
Oh wow!
Pizza Port. This is called Bacon and Eggs. It is a Imperial Coffee Porter.
That is also one that I visited when I was in San Diego. I'm not just saying this for your benefit, Dan. I took a trip there about a year and a half ago, and so with the sole purpose of visiting as many breweries as possible.
That's the place.
Pizza Port's kind of a bigger brewery down here. In California, so the great thing about it is you can get their cans a lot cheaper than some of the other breweries.
Well, the funny thing is, the location,
they make really quality beers.
The location where Pizza Port is, I think, was the original location of Stone, of the first Stone. I remember seeing something on the wall there about that. Do I have that right, Dan?
Right. I think you are right. I know that Stone certainly didn't start in that Disneyland of fermentation that they have now in Escondido.
Yeah, Disneyland is
fermentation is the correct term, I think. Yeah.
Even if you're not
Again.
talking about fermentation, just the first thing I thought of when I didn't go to the one in Escondido, but the one in San Diego at that big mall there. And Disney was the first thing I thought of when I saw their facility. It felt like I was like, this feels like a Disney restaurant.
The one in Liberty Station, by chance, is that ring?
That's
a bell?
it. Yeah.
I threw my mom's 60th
Captain,
birthday
this is
party.
Coffee City here.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, delightful. So much coffee. I love my coffee porters. When somebody says there's a coffee porter, I mean, you guys do a coffee. I don't remember any much single cut coffee beers, but if you say you're going to do a coffee porter, coffee stout, I want to taste coffee.
Yeah, agreed.
And this is coming through.
We're with you on
Coffee
that.
City here.
We're big coffee. We're coffee nerds. Very coffee irreverent.
Like if it's got a kind of a hint of coffee, no, don't put the word coffee on the can. You're just going to give me a hint. All right, I'm off my high horse now. Let's continue.
Right. No, I agree. No, it's interesting. Well, because Dan, you keep calling me Captain Porter Brown Stone. It's actually Brown Stout because it has all my favorite styles of beer in together. It's all right. No, I say this because I want to talk about some of my favorite.
Dancing with Mr. Brown Stout.
Like, I'm gonna throw so many
No, it's fine.
in here.
But I have to tell you that before I tell you about why it's obvious why I haven't had an 18 watt in all these years, because I'm more often to go for the Eric or the Heavy Boots of Lead, especially.
Ooh, yeah.
Love the Freeform Jazz Odyssey. Haven't had any of them on the show, but single cut, we've actually doubled the number of single cuts we've had in the history of the show tonight, because we had 3 times. On episode 2, we had the collaboration you did with KCBC called Maud Doom. In episode,
that was me.
Yeah,
I think it was. Was it you? I think it was me.
I'll take credit. Yeah.
All right. I'll check the spreadsheet.
All right. No, it could have been you.
Well, in those first ones, the first couple of episodes, we were trying to get every borough in, and I saw that one. I was like, this looks great. For episode 12, we did Steel Idle Trees, which I think
was you.
Incredible.
And then weird one.
It was, and I really liked it a lot.
Yeah. It was an anniversary, wasn't it?
It was an 8th anniversary edition. Yeah. They even gave you a free T-shirt with a little single cut with an 8 on there.
Sweet.
And then episode 14 had the aged Heavy Boots of Lead.
Did you get one of the ones
I love
dipped
that.
in wax and you had to
I
fry it open
did.
with your teeth? Okay.
Honestly, well, I didn't, but these guys had to talk a lot more than they thought they did on my pour, because it took me so long to get that thing open.
That's very true. We did have a lot of riffing on that episode, I remember.
Yeah, that was our first wax thing, and every time I have a wax one, it's like, okay, you guys talk for a while, I'll see how this works.
If I'm ever murdered in a coup at work, just you've heard it here. It was because of those cans.
But so when talking about all these fantastic beers, some which are you have a lot of ones you've been doing since almost the beginning, that you're still, even if you're changing the recipe a little bit, you're doing continually, but you're still finding and you're doing a lot of I see a lot of double dry hopped IPAs, which I know are very popular now. So you got to give people what they want. In the midst of all of that, you still come up with some really interesting experimental beers. How do you strike that balance?
Oh, that's like it's the number one question. It's what every creative meeting is about. It's what every fight and debate is about. It's really tough. We're very infrastructurally, we're a relatively large infrastructurally. I don't know if that's a word. In terms of our infrastructure, we're a relatively large brewer for a regional sized brewer. Our systems are quite large. Our system in Queens is oversized 30 barrels, and that's our smallest. That's our test batch system. Our facility up north is all 50 barrel batches going into 100, but predominantly 200 barrel tanks. So 400 kegs worth of beer in a batch. So it's hard. You want to be experimental. You want to take risks. You want to keep that innovation going because it's so crucial. Especially in our world with craft beer, everybody wants to try that next thing, and so do we. We get antsy. We want to try the next thing. But you got to be really confident, because we're really going to be swinging for the fences every time we turn on that system, and we know those systems like the back of our hands, so we know pretty well, I'm knocking on wood, 99% chance this beer is going to be good. Is it going to be our beer we're super satisfied with? Well, only time and our efforts will tell. So Yeah, always. And it's a frustration point. I don't think I'm betraying our inner
Yeah.
dramas there. It's like our brewers, they want to make something new, or they want to try that technique that they thought of after they were sitting and really doing sensory on the last batch beer we made. Like, oh, I cracked it. I know how to make this beer perfect. When can we brew it again? And then our salespeople have to be like, hey, we still have some, and we got to try all these other
Yeah.
things. Maybe next
Right.
year, and it's you're pulling your hair out. It's one of those things. So it's fun. It's these are nice problems. These are the
Yeah.
great problems. CO2 shortages, insurance payments, inflation. These are the unfun problems. But the what are we going to brew next? Let's have a cage match about it. That's the best. But at the end of the day, Rich, who's the founder of the company, is the chief creative officer. He's going to be the one. And a lot of times it's like, we're going to do this one because I have the coolest label that I just came up with yesterday. So that's the beer we got to put out because I want to see that label on the shelf. And a lot of times
Yeah.
that's how it happens. Label first and then beer after.
Reverse engineering.
That's fun. I love that.
That's terrific. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, it's interesting as far as another thing where the fiscal notion as far as distribution. You mentioned you're all over the East Coast as well as well into the Midwest, a little bit into the South, sort of like so half the country. And I spoke to a beer rep recently. I won't say who they are because I don't. I mean, she told me this openly, but I don't know if but they were talking about this imperial beer that they had. That they specifically they wanted it to be a higher ABV, but they had to keep it at 8% because otherwise they couldn't sell it as beer in New Hampshire. Have you had any stories along those lines as far as like things like okay rules we have to so we can distribute this to all markets?
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't believe that that's well, I believe your story is accurate. I don't believe that
Yeah.
her information necessarily was accurate. However, New Hampshire is a great example of we're the United States of America, and I'm not going to start a federalist argument here.
Right.
But in my world, it sucks. It sucks
Yeah.
so hard. Like every state has different rules, and not just from
Mhm.
like things involving the alcohol, but things involving the business surrounding alcohol. There's just
Oh.
horror stories of there's certain states that are known as like hard franchise states, kind of air quotes for those just listening, where this state basically oversees, regulates, kind of controls the business dealings of alcoholic companies. And after 1933, when Prohibition ended, the three-tier system in America was created. And this
Right,
is
with the
basically like
distributors.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, an anti-saloon measure to stop Schlitz from owning hundreds of bars scattered across densely populated urban centers and contributing to the moral blight of drinking, which we don't have to get into that. I think we all as adults now know like, oh, that was just racist. They just
Yeah.
knew
Yep.
immigrants were coming to beer
Yep.
culture and they wanted to get rid of them. That simple as that. That was, you know. Long story short, they created an intermediary, a second tier, a distributor. And if you can hear disdain in my voice, I love all of our partners. They're incredible people, but it's frustrating. That you have to, there's a
Yeah.
forced middle person. And of course, delivering beer is really, really hard. We're very glad to work with amazing distributors who can do that for us. But the notion that it's kind of federally mandated can be really frustrating to a lot of people. But every state also has different rules on what actually goes into the beer. So for a long time, New Hampshire, every beer that got sent to the state had to have lab tested and verified alcohol content on it. Objectively, that's probably a pretty good idea. But when you're the only state that does it, save for one other, it is a big wrench in the works. I'll tell you what,
Oh, sure.
it's
Yeah.
really intense. So I believe that when she says that kind of crazy story of New Hampshire. But there's states like Texas where if you've got a business, your distributor who owns the rights to your beer, in some cases, can have the legal standing to pay another brewery to make your beer and then sell it. Some really crazy, crazy stuff. Lots of paperwork, lots of paperwork. I like paperwork, pays my bills, but a lot of it.
Come a long way, but there's still still a lot of red tape out there.
We could cover the Statue of Liberty in that red tape. She'd be
Yes.
gleaming.
Be a nice.
Didn't Single Cut originally you were delivering your own beer to cut out the middleman.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So that actually is a provision in most states. You can self-distribute if you're
Mhm.
um, under a certain production cap, and that production cap is very, very large. The only brewer in the New York area who I think wouldn't qualify for that is probably Brooklyn Brewery.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
It's very, very
Okay.
high. You'd very quickly run into the logistics hurdles well before you run into to the uh, the barrelage hurdles, and that's true. So I shouldn't
Got it.
skip around that. And a bunch of really incredible beer brewers still do self distribution. It's a great way of getting to have that one-on-one experience with your clients. It's really vital. It's vital for craft brewing, but it's also not explicitly guaranteed. New Jersey's been proposing changes to their law for a while that would make that very, very difficult to do. There's been crazy talk about making tap rooms sell their beer to a distributor to then sell it back to them.
I've heard of stories in Florida where they do that, where they can do that without actually moving the beer. They sell it by keeping it there, and then they sell it, buy it back, and that way they can sell it in their own tap room.
I feel like there's a word for that. I think that's a racket, is what that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking
Accurate.
corruption. That's more specific.
Ugh.
All right, well, Dan, to end all of this on a more positive note, happy 10 years. I know you haven't been here all 10, but happy 10 years to Single Cut. What are some exciting things coming up on the horizon for Single Cut?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're based in New York City, you got to come and hang out. We just shuffled around a lot of material. Our Queens Brewery is brewing a lot less beer now than it used to for logistics, quality of life reasons, a million things. We have our big brewery up at Single Cut North, which is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's my long-winded way of saying that we have some space for the first time in 10 years, which is a completely foreign concept.
Is that why you put in the pinball machines?
Especially in New York.
I've finally gotten to realize one of my all-time hospitality dreams. And we have an incredibly curated pinball bar hidden in the back of Single Cut Queens. It's a partnership with Sunshine Laundry in Greenpoint, which is just one of the absolute best pinball meccas on the East Coast. They're going through some transitions right now, so we're kind of serving as their remote location, if you will. So that's a forever thing. That's not a promo we're doing this quarter or anything. That is our pinball bar. We had our first tournament this last weekend, which was incredible. I would invite everybody to come out and play. Though you got to get there early because that tournament was filled 40 minutes before registration closed.
Oh wow!
It was amazing. So we had to turn some people away, which I never liked doing, but it was so much fun. And if you're out in far-flung New York or far-flung from the city, 5 years for Single Cut North coming up at the end of this month. So we'll be celebrating with our 5th annual Have a Drink on Me 5K. And when that all wraps up, we'll transition right into our 5th anniversary party. We've got some incredible musicians we've brought in from the Capital Region in Vermont. We'll have a huge outdoor stage. And in 2 weeks, which makes my stomach drop as I said that, 2 weeks from today, we'll be opening up the Single Cut Barn, our outlet in the Syracuse area. We'll be in Manlius, New York, if you know that area, which is really, really lovely.
Very cool.
Brand new tap room built in a 203-year-old barn in what used to be an old lumber yard and has now turned into this incredible community-based maker fair. So it's some awesome coffee roasters who are there, glass blowers, succulent gardeners, incredible antique artisans, and then we're right in the middle in this big, beautiful barn with the big beer garden. It's going to be something really special.
Very cool. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap things up. But Huck mentioned a moment ago that one thing we have not yet done yet is the naming rights.
That's true.
That's right. It's time.
The official
Ooh.
naming
Sacred
ceremony.
I assume that the captain and Beer Wonder have some great ideas.
Well, I mean, it's hard to Single Cut Dan is. I mean, if that includes his actual name, it's a good one. Another one, since mostly because it's where you come from, and it's such a, as you mentioned, a wonderful beer paradise. There's always Dan Diego.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Now, I was thinking of because they do so much rock references.
Oh yeah, music thing. Sure.
Which I
yeah.
love.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
We didn't even get into that. Sure.
there's not there's not a lot of Dans that are rockers. I mean, we're not going to get any Fogelberg lyrics for you.
Oh,
But what about Steely Dan? We feel good about Steely Dan?
top 5 favorite band of all time.
Okay, great.
Wow. There you
So
go.
I'm thinking it could be, we could say Dr. Wu,
I don't get that one.
Kid Charlemagne.
Oh, that's fun.
That's fun.
That's fun. I'm so, I don't know if I'm supposed to participate here. I'm sorry.
No, you absolutely
no,
are. You,
because
you have full
absolutely.
approval. Yes,
There's no, you can't have a name forced on you. You must approve of it.
exactly. And
Kid
so,
Charlemagne. And I said Big Black Cow, but that's, that's not, we don't want to go, maybe necessarily want to do that. Although it's supposed to be something that you drink. I was just looking at the lyrics. You drink your Big Black Cow.
It's a Coca-Cola float, if I'm not mistaken.
See, I did not know that. So you know your
Learning
Steely Dan.
things.
Hey, you
Yeah.
gotta you go make yourself a big black cow, and then get out of here. That's all I'm saying. You
And get
got-
outta here.
You got your marching orders.
You know.
now could you make that with Eric? Is there
Right.
a version?
And you have Eric More
There
Cowbell
Yeah.
You certainly can. Let me tell you, it's
But
delicious.
to call them. Let me. All right, you guys discuss. Hang on, give me a second.
All right. So we've given you. So we've given you several options. What is popping for you, Dan?
I'm going Kid Charlemagne. That feels
Charlemagne?
good. That's
All right.
that's
Sometimes-
Is there gas in the car?
Sometimes that first reaction is the one that sticks.
Mm.
Yes, there's gas in the car. All right, let's go with that.
All right, Kid Charlemagne. It is.
Kid,
Well,
I love it. He loves it. We love it.
I was going to say Dan,
So
but,
easy.
but I'm now going to call you by your Beer Avenger name, Kid Charlemagne. Thanks so much for coming in. It was wonderful hearing all about your beer journey. And come back anytime.
Captain Brown Stout, Huck, Wonder.
Oh, nice job.
What a pleasure.
Oh,
What a pleasure.
Excellent. All right. So
absolutely.
if you're looking to visit the New York version of Single Cut Beer Smiths, the original one that's at 1933 37th Street, very near my undisclosed location in Astoria, Queens,
Mhm.
and then up the Single Cut North and the other one up near Syracuse, soon to be opened, the Big Barn. Just look on their website, find all of them. And if you want to know more about the Beer Avengers, you probably all know this, but follow us on social media at the Beer Avengers. You can look at that on Instagram, Twitter. What's the other one? Facebook. And you can email us at thebeeravengers@gmail.com. Am I leaving anything out, Beer Wonder?
Don't forget TikTok.
Oh,
Get
yes.
that TikTok.
We are at
Because we're
We're hip.
band.
It just
We're on
hits
there.
differently over there. It just
Yeah,
hits
yeah,
differently.
It's different.
the great thing about TikTok is that we always get lots of views, but who knows how long people are actually looking at them or engaging. So it gives us a false sense of exposure.
Exactly.
All right.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
yeah,
Dan. Great time.
yeah, plays
Thank you,
out,
Dan.
Huck.
Oh, with a beer Avengers, beer Avengers, beer Avengers.
We're the Avengers.